I still remember the smell of lilies that day. Too sweet, too fake, trying to cover the stench of decay that no flower could hide. My father's funeral was small, quiet, and cold. The man had built half the town, but in the end, barely a dozen people came to watch his coffin sink into the earth. I stood near the grave in my black dress and heels that sunk into the wet ground and wondered if I was crying because I loved him or because I'd finally lost the one person who still owed me an explanation. My name's Rachel Avery, and I was the daughter he never truly saw. My brother Michael stood on the opposite side of the grave, tall, confident, dressed in an expensive navy suit like he just walked out of a boardroom. He didn't cry. He didn't even blink when the priest threw dirt over the casket. He'd always been the golden boy, the heir, the pride of our father's empire, Avery Construction. And I was the daughter who left, the disappointment, the one who ran away to New York with a backpack and a dream of becoming an artist. When the lawyer called me 2 days later, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. The will reading was held in Father's old office, the one with leather walls and the view of the Avery River Bridge he'd built himself. The lawyer, Mr. Grant, sat behind the oak desk, his voice dry and steady as he read the document. Michael got the company, the house, the cars, the accounts. I got the cabin, a small, forgotten property up north near Lake Carter, one my mother used to take me to before she disappeared when I was 10. No money, no shares, no explanation, just a line in Father's handwriting, added at the end of the document. Rachel must find her answers where it all began. Michael smirked when the lawyer finished. He didn't even look at me, just patted my shoulder and said, "Guess Dad still wanted you to have your little art retreat." But I saw the twitch in his jaw, the way his hand tightened when the cabin was mentioned. Something in that place mattered, something more than either of us understood. That night, I packed my bags and drove north, through the cold rain, past the same gas stations and forests I remembered as a child. My phone barely had signal when I reached the lake. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it. Wood creaking, windows fogged, and that faint scent of pine and dust. Inside, everything was covered with sheets, except the fireplace mantel. There, in a small wooden frame, was a photo I'd never seen before. My father, my mother, and Michael, except the date on the back said 1989, the year I was born, and my brother wasn't supposed to be born until 1992. My heart stopped. There was something wrong. Something about our family's story didn't fit. And as the storm outside began to roar, I realized, whatever secret my father left behind, it was buried deep in this cabin. And I wasn't leaving until I found it. The morning light came gray and heavy. I hadn't slept. Every sound, the wind, the old boards, felt like the house was breathing with me, waiting. I started searching. Drawers, closets, under floorboards, dust-covered boxes filled with receipts, photo albums, and old blueprints. My father's handwriting appeared again and again, sharp, decisive, cold. Then, in the bottom of a trunk, under a stack of yellowed newspapers, I found a leather-bound journal. It was my mother's. The first page was dated March 14, 1988. He promised me it would stay between us. But I can't keep lying, not when Rachel will grow up believing something that isn't true. I read that line over and over until it blurred. The next entries told a story that shattered everything I thought I knew. My mother had fallen in love with a man named Samuel, a contractor who worked for my father. They had a secret relationship before she married him. When she got pregnant, with me, Father found out. Instead of leaving, she stayed. And he forced her to keep the truth hidden. My real father wasn't Charles Avery. It was Samuel. I dropped the journal. My hands were shaking. I wasn't an Avery. I was the product of betrayal. Then I heard a car outside. Michael. He stepped in like he owned the place. His cologne, his expensive coat, his fake smile. "Didn't think you'd actually come here," he said, glancing around. "Dad's gone, Rachel. Whatever ghost you're chasing—" I cut him off. "You knew, didn't you?" He froze. "You knew I wasn't his daughter." His jaw clenched. "I didn't think it mattered." I wanted to scream. "Didn't matter? You let me spend my whole life thinking I was one of you." Michael looked down, guilt flashing across his face. "He made me promise, said it would protect you." "Protect me from what?" That's when I noticed the bruise on his neck, deep, purple, like someone had grabbed him hard. He followed my gaze, adjusted his collar, and said quietly, "Rachel, don't dig too deep. Some things in this family were buried for a reason." He left before I could ask another word. And when his car disappeared down the muddy road, I saw something glinting near the porch, a camera lens, hidden under the eaves. Someone was watching the cabin. The footage on that old security camera changed everything. I found the recorder hidden behind a false wall panel. It still worked. The timestamps went back years. And then one video, dated just weeks before Father died. He was sitting in that very cabin, staring into the camera like he knew I'd find it someday. Rachel, if you're watching this, then the truth finally caught up to us. I've done things to protect this family, things I regret. Michael isn't who he says he is either. None of this is what it seems. The screen went black before I could hear the rest. Someone had deleted the final minute. That night, I called the only person who might help, Detective Carla Monroe, an old friend from high school who now worked for the state police. When I told her everything, the will, the journal, the footage, she went silent. Then she said, "Rachel, are you somewhere safe?" Define safe. "Don't leave that cabin. I'll be there in the morning." But morning never came, because around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps outside and Michael's voice. He was arguing with someone, angry, desperate. I peered through the blinds, 2 figures in the dark, Michael and a woman, tall, blonde, in a gray coat. She handed him something small, a USB drive. He slipped it into his pocket, then turned and saw me through the window and smiled. That was the moment I realized my brother might not just be keeping secrets, he might be protecting himself from being exposed. I ran, through the woods, down the road, straight into the storm. My car wouldn't start, so I took his truck. I didn't even know where I was going, just away from that cabin, from him, from everything. The USB drive was still in the cup holder. Inside it, a folder labeled Loyalty, documents, bank records, scans of fake IDs, and one photo that made my blood run cold. Michael standing beside Samuel, alive, the man who was supposed to be my real father. They looked like partners. When I reached a motel, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The documents showed wire transfers, millions, between Avery Construction and offshore accounts in Panama, and every one of them had 2 signatures, Charles Avery and Michael Avery. They'd been laundering money for years, but after Father died, Michael was continuing it with Samuel, and maybe Father's death hadn't been natural after all. Detective Monroe finally found me 2 days later. I showed her everything. By then, Michael was missing. The police raided Avery Construction and found enough evidence to open an investigation into fraud and possible homicide. But I never got closure, because a week later, the cabin burned down. Arson, no suspects. All the photos, the journal, the camera, gone. Except one thing. Before leaving, I'd taken the frame from the mantel, the one with Father, Mother, and Michael. Behind it, hidden under the paper backing, was another note in Father's handwriting. "Family isn't blood, Rachel. It's truth. And truth is what they'll kill to hide." Now, a year later, I stand at the rebuilt Avery Bridge, the one that started it all, and toss that photo into the river. I'm not an Avery, but I am my mother's daughter. And I've learned the most expensive thing in this world is the price of blood.